Hello everyone, John Pollock here alongside Jimmy Corderas coming out of TNA Sacrifice on Sunday night from the Impact Zone in Orlando, Florida. Maybe the Make No Impact Zone based on that crowd on Sunday night. Not that I'm going to necessarily criticize this audience. I can't say there was a whole lot of interest going into this show, but this was a bizarre crowd, Jimmy, for TNA standards.
Yeah, this was really different because there seemed to be a disconnect between the audience and what was actually happening in the ring. There was no correlation. It didn't. It's like the audio was off or something like that.
If you can kind of overlook everything going into this pay-per-view, this was certainly, I always feel a pay-per-view should be something that it feels like a big event, it's something special, and not something that it's a chore that we've got to do every couple of months. That's what Sacrifice felt to me going into this. So already, your interest level, I think, is at a certain level. But throwing that out, watching this as a pure standalone show, what did you enjoy about the show, Jimmy, in terms of whether it delivered?
I don't think overall it delivered. I mean, I went into this thing with low expectations. I didn't expect a lot going into it. So, you know, the bar was set low to begin with. But there were some good points. I mean, like, obviously, we talked before we went on the air, Gunner and Storm had worked their butts off. I mean, those guys really killed each other and had a good match. The only problem I have with that whole scenario, though, is that every match they've had has been a gimmick match. They didn't start.
We've gone from a last man standing match, no DQ match, to the I Quit match. And now there's like staples of all these matches with the chairs inside of the ring, doing the superplex spot, this time incorporating a guardrail. And personally speaking, when I see two guys doing this amount of damage to their bodies inside, and the crowd's not reacting at all, it leaves me with a feeling of depression rather than how great these guys are working. And they worked very hard in this match, and you put that same match in an all-state arena, we're probably talking about that at the end of the year.
Oh, absolutely. And there were other good points in the match. I mean, like Bully Ray and Bobby Roode had a good tables match, but again, another gimmick match. It's beginning to feel like Memphis of the 70s or 80s with all the gimmick matches.
It was almost a complete role reversal in the main event where there was no run-ins, and it felt strange that it was just a clean win by Eric Young. One of the big complaints I had on this show, going back to Lockdown, the big storyline going into that particular pay-per-view was control of wrestling operations between Dixie Carter and MVP. MVP wins in the Lethal Lockdown match. He is now the head of wrestling operations. So what happens is first pay-per-view as head of wrestling operations, he doesn't show up for the pay-per-view. Dixie Carter comes out, costs a guy a match. There's all this stuff going on the pay-per-view. Where is your guy who fought to have control of this side of the company? I just thought it made MVP look foolish. There was no storyline reason for him not being there. He just didn't show up.
It's, again, a case of not making sense and progressing forward with storylines. You know, Dixie Carter still owns the company. MVP is head of wrestling operations. But still, if she's head of the company, can't she still control him? It just, there's a whole disconnect there that I don't like.
Quickly, we talked about it so much going in, the first ever that I'm aware of committed match between Mr. Anderson and Samuel Shaw. Hey, this match was about as bad as the build up to it. At least it was consistent.
Yeah, at least, again, we knew what we were getting going into it. I didn't like the fact that Christy Hemme gets involved in the finish to help Mr. Anderson win the match with one of, I don't know how many, I lost count. I don't know what the over-under was for low blows for the pay-per-view last night, but that was one of them in that.
Not a great night for testicles at TNA Sacrifice. I give this show a thumbs down. Yourself, Jimmy, I know you're always the glass half full kind of guy. But
I would like to give it thumbs in the middle, but I can't.
Wow, there you go. When Jimmy Corderas is not liking things, folks. Time to make some changes. TNA, they will be back with their next pay-per-view June 15th. It's Slammiversary.